Between the 1500s and 1865, 10 million women, men, and children were enslaved on American soil. The 10 Million Names Project is a nationwide effort to create a database and identify those slaves and tell their stories. And they need your help to make it happen. I even started my own family search, but for my family and so many other African Americans, family gatherings is how our history has traditionally been documented. Every other year in my family, we gather for a family reunion. It's a tradition rooted in many African American families across the country. Food, family, and reconnection. But these reunions historically has always served a bigger purpose. It's also where we gather to tell the oral histories of our families, passed from grandparents to grandchildren and so forth. Incredibly important tradition for descendants of slaves. In 2023, a new effort was launched to create a formal database of all those stories.
So the 10 Million Names Project was really walks in a proud tradition of African American communities that have been doing this research since we came to this country.
Historian Dr. Carrie Greenidge says before the abolishment of slavery in 1865, slaves were considered property, offering no names, just maybe gender and age in slave masters' final wills or newspapers when slaves were being sold, which is why the 1870 federal census was so important.
1870 was the first census in which African Americans were listed on their own by name, and that you can actually trace to. So prior to 1870, it is often difficult for African Americans who are descendants from enslaved people to find the names of their ancestors.
Greenidge says many black families run into something called the 1870 wall, the same wall my family ran into. The marriage of Matthew and Cherry in North Mississippi shortly after the Civil War created everyone at this family reunion, including me. But what their life was like before that census remains a mystery. Still, some African Americans have been able to break through that wall.
I always knew that Buffington was not an African American name. In school, we were the only Buffingtons. Every Buffington I met was some kin to me. And so I started my search just to find out my name.
Eunice Buffington is president of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society of Memphis and uses her journey to identify her maternal great-great-grandfather, Martin Robinson, who was born into slavery, as the blueprint for other African American families.
And so for me, the first step was starting with what I knew. The family that I knew, documenting the family that I knew. And I supplemented that when I did the DNA test. So I did an ancestry DNA test, and that opened up a whole world of cousins that I didn't know.
She also used census records, obituaries, Civil War documents to trace Martin Robinson's steps across the country with several slave owners, from Maryland to North Carolina to Georgia to South Carolina, before joining the Union Army's colored troops in Tennessee.
So he was sold several times, but he always kept the name Robinson, even though his mother and some of his brothers took on the slave master's name. He kept the name Robinson.
And why do you think it's important to keep the name of Robinson?
I think for a lot of people that was the breadcrumbs that they used so other family members could find them.
It was the Robinson family deed of 1832 that she found listed a Negro fellow Martin, listed alongside the slave owners, hogs, corn, and farming tools. Martin Robinson, no longer property, becoming one of the millions of slave names identified and a vital step towards the 10 Million Names Project goal.
We have managed to work pretty quickly at this point, and probably going forward, it's going to seem like we've hit a brick wall, but that just means the research is sort of getting more into the weeds. But we have a few million at this point.
Greenidge says the project could take years to complete, but it's important to create a more accurate picture of this country's history. For Buffington, identifying her ancestral history serves an additional purpose.
Pride to know that he made it from that devastated state of being, to have a family, to raise a family, to be a farmer, he raised a family and was a successful farmer. And so I was proud to say that I'm a part of that lineage. I'm a part of that. And from those roots, I rise.
So I had my own meeting with the folks at 10 Million Names Projects, and they helped me find documents that showed my great-great-grandfather actually served in the Civil War. We never knew that. So I took a trip to Washington, D.C. last year and visited the National Archives, where I found his military pension records. It was a treasure trove of so much information. I learned he was injured in the war, the names of my great-great-grandparents' former neighbors, even the pastor that married them in 1867. If you're ready to get started, to find this story at actionnews5.com. Good luck.